Welcome back. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a like. Enjoy the video. Colonel Emma Brooks enters a small supermarket on a serene weekend afternoon in Austin, Texas. Dressed in a casual white shirt, blue jeans, and sneakers, she seamlessly blends in with a group of everyday shoppers. With a modest appearance, no one would have guessed that this woman had devoted her life to defending the country, commanding hundreds of soldiers on the battlefield. Emma relishes quiet moments, selecting essential items on her own after a long, challenging day. However, that tranquility was soon disrupted by a seemingly innocuous act that revealed the true character of a person. At the end of the aisle, a tall man in a police uniform, Officer Paul Smith, accidentally dropped a packet of noodles and a bottle of soft drink on the floor. Emma paused, observing as Paul glanced at the mess and then casually walked away, leaving behind the clutter he had created. As a soldier, Emma is trained to pay attention to detail and take responsibility for her actions. Paul's careless behavior and indifferent attitude made it impossible for her to stay silent. Emma stepped forward, her voice steady yet clear. "I'm sorry, sir. You just dropped a few things. Maybe you should pick it up so as not to inconvenience others." Instead of apologizing, Paul shot her a cold look and swept his gaze over Emma as if she weren't worth his attention. With a contemptuous grin, he replied, "Who do you think you are to tell me what to do? I don't have time to concern myself with trivial matters." Facing that arrogant demeanor, Emma remained composed, her eyes shining with seriousness as she responded, "As a police officer, you have a duty to set an example for the community. Picking up your things is not only courteous, but shows respect to everyone." Yet Emma's words did not prompt Paul to recognize his responsibility. Instead, he responded with sarcasm, hurling offensive remarks at her. What began as a minor incident escalated into a tense atmosphere within the supermarket. The crowd started to pay attention to the confrontation. Emma could distinctly feel the curious, timid gazes from around her, but she stood tall, confronting Paul's challenge, ready to defend her stance despite any prejudice or insults. Paul Smith glanced at Emma again, his eyes filled with disdain. He remained tall and complacent, showing no intention of heeding her words. Internally, Emma experienced a surge of anger, but with the courage of a seasoned officer, she expertly controlled her emotions. Her years on the battlefield had taught her that composure and decisiveness can resolve even the most stressful situations. She took a deep breath, maintaining a calm yet firm voice. "Sir, this is not just a trivial matter. You're wearing a police uniform, and everyone here is observing you. Performing an act as simple as picking up something is not only a citizen's duty, but also reflects on your profession." Her words served as a warning, yet instead of listening, Paul sneered, his laughter dripping with mockery and arrogance. "Listen," he said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "You seem to think you know a lot about the responsibilities of a police officer, but you really don't know anything. This isn't worth worrying about, and frankly, you should mind your own business." Emma felt the curious stares from those around her. Some individuals had begun to pull out their phones to document the scene, but she chose not to be distracted. In her heart, she was upset not only about Paul's negligence, but also about the injustice she and many others had endured. This affront was not merely personal. It symbolized a larger segment of the societal prejudices she had fought against throughout her career. Emma stood her ground, unyielding. Her eyes sparkled with resolve as she stared straight at Paul. "You're misjudging the wrong person," she stated, her voice gentle yet powerful. "You may not realize it, but your behavior now will have repercussions. Not just for me, but for you too." Paul smirked, dismissing her words. But beneath Emma's composed exterior, anger and determination were brewing. She recognized that this was not simply a petty dispute, but an opportunity to advocate for herself and the principles she had always held dear. Confronted with Paul's defiance and insulting remarks, Emma felt a rise of frustration in her heart, yet she refused to let it overshadow her calm. Her gaze was icy as she looked directly at him, unfaltering. Paul remained there, wearing a sarcastic grin and eyes filled with contempt, as if he were waiting for Emma to lose her composure. Instead of responding with rage, she opted for reason and the courage of an experienced commander. "I'm not here to bicker," Emma said, her tone calm but authoritative. "I merely want to remind you that your actions not only impact others, but also reflect who you are as a police officer. You should be more aware of your responsibilities than anyone else." Emma's pointed remarks caused the crowd to focus more intently. Some people ceased shopping altogether, pausing to witness the unfolding drama. Paul, feeling the pressure of the eyes upon him, opted to mask his embarrassment with arrogance. He chuckled, the sound resonating in the small aisle of the supermarket. Responsibility? Paul scoffed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Who are you to lecture me? Just an ordinary woman, nothing more, nothing less. Don't think you have the right to stand here and instruct me. You know nothing about my job. Paul's sexist and racist comments were a severe blow to Emma's self-esteem. But instead of allowing her emotions to take the lead, she inhaled deeply, keeping her gaze unwavering. She understood that her actions in this moment could serve as a testament to the difference between her and Paul, a true leader versus an abuser of authority. I don't need you to comprehend who I am, Emma replied, her voice steady yet impactful. But I want you to realize that everyone in this society deserves to be treated with dignity. And if you can't do that, then you're the one who doesn't deserve the uniform you wear. Paul laughed harder, his laughter laced with challenge and derision. What do you think you can do to me? I'm a police officer, and the law is on my side. And you're just an ordinary woman of color. You should know your place before you get yourself into trouble. Paul's words were not merely an insult, but a direct challenge. Nevertheless, Emma did not waver. She felt the tense silence enveloping the supermarket, with all eyes observing her every move. This was no longer a private dispute. It had become a moment for her to demonstrate that composure and determination would always triumph over arrogance and bigotry. Emma stood tall, her posture rigid, as if she were facing an enemy on the battlefield rather than a man in a police uniform. Her eyes shone with determination, unwavering. Although Paul's words were filled with mockery and disdain, the surrounding crowd began to grow quieter, as if they were collectively holding their breath, anticipating her next action. She advanced a step, completely unafraid. Her voice remained calm but sharp as a knife. You can view me however you wish, but remember that arrogance and a lack of respect for others do not conceal moral failings. I'm not here to vie for power with you, but I won't allow you to continue your abuse of it. Paul's expression soured, his confidence starting to wane in the face of Emma's resolute demeanor. He examined her, searching for any hint of insecurity or fear, but all he found was a woman as steadfast as a bronze statue. The crowd was now fully engaged in the confrontation, some even raising their phones to capture every moment. Don't pretend to be virtuous in front of me, Paul snapped, trying to regain control of the situation. You're nothing but a troublemaker. If I choose, I can have you thrown out of here immediately. Emma didn't smile, but the corners of her mouth twitched slightly, an expression of unnerving calm. If you believe your authority permits you to act like this, then I will let the law address that. You were mistaken to think I would be intimidated. The atmosphere in the supermarket froze, and the tension escalated as two individuals faced off. Paul, a large and menacing presence, and Emma, a woman who appeared unassuming yet emanated undeniable authority. You may continue to insult me, but remember that I'm not here alone, Emma said, her voice steady but impactful. There are numerous witnesses, and if you think you can use words to demean me, you're mistaken. I am not standing here to defend my personal honor. I am here to uphold the values I've dedicated my life to protecting. The entire supermarket seemed immersed in complete silence. Although no one dared to speak, through their gazes, Emma recognized that the crowd was on her side. Paul, while still trying to maintain a tough exterior, couldn't conceal his shame as he realized the situation was slipping from his grasp. Emma remained resolute, like a pillar of strength in the storm of injustice and prejudice. In the face of rising tension, as Paul began to lose control, Emma maintained an astonishing calmness under the watchful and sometimes fearful eyes of the crowd. She understood that her every action and word at this moment not only impacted her, but also symbolized justice and righteousness. Paul advanced, his voice growing harsher and more aggressive. I warn you, don't escalate the situation. I'm the police, and I have the right to deal with you right here. His words rang out. But instead of intimidating Emma, they only fueled her determination. Emma slowly retrieved her phone from her pocket, not in a frantic manner, but with a sense of purpose, as if she had anticipated this moment. You have your rights, she replied, her voice soft yet sharp as steel. And I have my rights too. Let's see whose side the law will support. She swiftly dialed a number, her voice steady. When the call connected, she stated, "Hello, I need assistance. Beg you. Right at the central supermarket, there is a police officer who is misusing his authority and threatening individuals. I need the appropriate personnel to come here immediately. Good." Paul was taken aback, his eyes widening as he realized the situation was spiraling beyond his control. The crowd began to murmur loudly, and some individuals stopped recording the video to contact the authorities. Emma, despite being in the midst of chaos, maintained her composed demeanor. "What do you think you're doing?" Paul shouted, stepping closer to Emma, but she stood her ground. Her eyes bore into his without a trace of fear. "I'm doing what you're supposed to do, defending fairness and accountability," she stated, her voice firm but not raised. At that moment, police car sirens echoed outside, signaling that help had arrived. The crowd parted to make way as the officers entered. Emma slowly pointed her hand at Paul, her gaze unwavering. "This is the individual you need to assess. All of his actions have been documented and fully witnessed." Paul, who had now lost his bravado, began to feel embarrassed. The confidence that once adorned his face vanished, replaced by confusion and anxiety. Meanwhile, Emma remained steadfast, calm, as if she had anticipated all the developments. She recognized that her intelligence and courage had helped her overcome this challenge, not only to protect herself, but also to demonstrate that justice must always be upheld. When the supermarket doors swung open and Mayor Andrew Preston walked in, the atmosphere, already tense, grew even more serious. He entered with a commanding presence, his sharp gaze scanning the crowd before resting on Emma. His footsteps were decisive, like a man who had come to rectify all wrongs. Paul, who had been confused earlier, was now completely stiff. The usual arrogance that had marked his expression faded, replaced by a look of bewilderment and fear. He lowered his head and stammered, attempting to explain. "Mr. Mayor, this is just a misunderstanding. I didn't mean anything. It was just that she... But Andrew wouldn't allow him to finish. "Be quiet," he said, his voice low but authoritative, interrupting Paul. "I came here because of an urgent call from Colonel Emma Anderson, a person I hold in high regard. His behavior has been reported and witnessed by numerous individuals. Don't think your flimsy justification can erase what you've done." Emma remained still, her gaze fixed on Andrew. She felt a slight relief knowing that justice was about to be served. Yet her expression remained resolute, serving as a reminder that this struggle was not over. Andrew approached her, his expression softening. "Colonel Anderson, I hope you are not injured or harmed in any way. This behavior is unacceptable and will be addressed thoroughly." Emma nodded, her voice steady yet assertive. "I'm fine, but this isn't solely about me. It's about holding those in power accountable for their actions. If I hadn't stood up today, many others would have suffered unfair treatment." Andrew turned to Paul, his eyes icy. "You have misused your authority, insulted a high-ranking military officer, and eroded public trust in the police force. You do not deserve to wear this uniform." A female witness from the crowd stepped forward, offering her phone with a video recording of the incident. Andrew glanced at it, and his expression grew more serious. This behavior is intolerable," he declared, then addressed the police officers who had just arrived. "Take away his weapons and insignia immediately, and an investigation will commence, and he will face all appropriate penalties." Paul, now thoroughly demoralized, could only stand speechless as the officers followed through with Andrew's orders. The crowd outside began to applaud in recognition of Emma and the mayor's decisive actions. Emma, while not seeking recognition, felt a profound sense of relief. When Andrew turned back to her, he spoke with respect in his voice. "Colonel Anderson, this city needs individuals like you to remind us of our responsibilities and integrity." "I apologize for what you experienced." Emma nodded, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you, Mayor. I just hope that these actions will lead to genuine change." Andrew nodded, his countenance solemn yet empathetic. "We will ensure that." Emma exited the supermarket, stepping into the sunlight, feeling her heart uplifted. Yet she understood that the fight for justice and accountability is ongoing, and she was prepared to continue advocating, not only for herself, but for all those who could not stand up on their own. After being stripped of his badge and weapon at the scene, Paul Smith was taken away in silence, his face stripped of its former arrogance, now clouded by fear and confusion. As the police vehicle departed from the supermarket, the crowd did not disperse. The chatter and critical gazes continued to follow him like a haunting presence. At the police station, Paul faced immediate questioning. Video evidence and witness testimonies made his case irrefutable. The head of the police department, informed by Mayor Andrew Preston, declared that Paul's actions were a stain on the entire force. That same day, he was officially suspended from his position and subjected to a comprehensive investigation. News of the incident spread rapidly, both in the local community and across the media. Videos of Paul's misconduct and his rude treatment of Emma Anderson circulated millions of times, igniting a wave of outrage. Individuals who had been mistreated by Paul in the past also began to come forward, sharing their stories and compounding his troubles. Paul, once proud of his position and authority, now faced an inevitable downfall. People who had once known him began to distance themselves, and former colleagues expressed their disappointment. In the small house where he lived alone, Paul sat with his head bowed, clearly grappling with the weight of the mistakes he had made. Meanwhile, Emma Anderson carried on with her life, characterized by humility and determination. She did not seek attention, yet received countless expressions of gratitude and admiration from the community. Her actions not only compelled Paul to face consequences, but also ignited a broader conversation about responsibility and ethics in law enforcement. Ultimately, Paul Smith not only lost his job, but also confronted legal charges for abuse of authority and threats involving weapons. In subsequent trials, he lowered his head, devoid of any remnants of the arrogance he once displayed. This was the price he paid, for forgetting that authority comes with responsibility, and that injustice has no place in a fair society. Following the shocking incident, Emma Anderson's life did not revert to its previous state. The story of her courage rapidly spread, becoming a symbol for those who dared to confront injustice. The press, media, and activists hailed Emma as a modern-day hero. However, for Emma, she did not view herself as a hero. She perceived it as the duty of a soldier and a citizen to protect the value of equity. In the weeks that followed, the repercussions of the event began to emerge. Local police departments faced heightened scrutiny, and certain changes to recruitment and training processes were enacted. Seminars on responsibility and ethics in law enforcement were organized, with Emma invited as a keynote speaker. Standing before hundreds of attendees, she shared her story not for accolades, but to emphasize that power is only meaningful when utilized to protect, not to oppress. As for Paul Smith, his career came to an official close. The public trial not only stripped him of his temporary freedom, but also his dignity forever. The community turned its back on him, and those who once supported him could not forgive his misuse of authority. In the darkness of his existence, Paul began to grasp the bitter lesson that pride and injustice not only harm others, but also culminate in self-destruction. Emma, after all, did not merely address a personal issue. She became an inspiration for numerous movements advocating for justice and equality. Articles and videos chronicling her actions were disseminated widely, encouraging individuals not to shy away from confronting injustice. Yet Emma maintained a simple and steadfast demeanor. She continued to serve in the military, exemplifying that true strength lies not in power, but in integrity and the courage to do what is right. Every time she reflected on the incident, she felt not regret but a quiet pride, knowing that her actions contributed to making a small part of society better. For her, this narrative was not an endpoint, but a reminder that the struggle for justice requires unity and bravery, and she was willing to meet any challenges that arose in her quest to uphold the values she believed in. Emma Anderson's legacy was not confined to newspaper articles and videos, capturing the moment she stood amidst a storm of criticism and threats. It was also embedded in the profound changes in societal perceptions regarding justice and accountability. Her resolute actions against injustice sparked inspiration, not only within the military but also within the community, especially among women and people of color who frequently encounter discrimination and marginalization. Each time they hear stories about Emma, they remember not only her courageous actions in the supermarket, but also a resilient woman prepared to confront all injustice at great personal cost. The workshops she engaged in inspired numerous individuals, particularly those within law enforcement, to champion dignity and uphold human rights in every situation. The adjustments made to police recruitment and training processes, which Emma had a hand in, were beginning to yield positive results as an increasing number of officers became more cognizant of their duties and professional ethics. But Emma's legacy extends beyond reforms or social acknowledgement. It manifests in her daily life, providing a role model for younger generations who look to her for guidance on how to face challenges with composure, patience, and unwavering determination. Emma does not seek fame, but the respect she garners from everyone, from her peers to the community, is clear evidence of the impact that integrity can create. Despite the obstacles and challenges throughout her career, Emma has consistently stood her ground. She understands that a legacy is not measured by accolades or awards, but by the values a person leaves in the hearts of others. For Emma, her legacy is the change she has initiated, the firm steps that the next generation will follow, to generations who will stand up for justice and fear not confrontation with injustice. Thus, regardless of how many years pass, Emma Anderson's legacy will endure not only in seminars and speeches, but in the hearts of those who continue to advocate for a more equitable society. After the incident with Paul Smith concluded, Emma Anderson did not rest on resolving a personal case, but embraced a larger mission. She realized that injustice is not an isolated occurrence, but a widespread issue that requires foundational change. Each day, every story she encounters from marginalized and mistreated individuals deepens her sense of duty in her actions. She recognizes that it is insufficient to depend solely on remarkable individuals for change. A collective movement is necessary where everyone can express themselves and fight for their rights. Emma began engaging in call-to-action campaigns, inviting individuals, particularly law enforcement, to reevaluate their roles and responsibilities in preserving justice. She organized meetings, workshops, and media campaigns to encourage every person to stand up and confront injustice rather than remain silent. Each of us has the right to say no to abuse of power, and each of us can make a difference, became a mantra she frequently reiterated in her speeches. Emma's outreach extended beyond military personnel, encompassing civilians who felt marginalized or voiceless in society. Emma motivated them not to fear authority, because justice is a fundamental right that cannot be disregarded. Emma's mindset during this period transformed from cautiousness to unwavering determination. She realized that every action, every call, possessed the potential to amplify influence, representing a pathway toward systemic change that is sustainable and long-lasting. Emma is not merely fighting for herself, but for those who cannot advocate for themselves, for the fairer society she envisions. The call to action is fraught with challenges, but Emma is prepared to confront them. She understands that this journey is long and not everyone will accompany her, but she believes in the strength of solidarity and the capability of each individual to effect change if they persist in their fight. With each stride, Emma has been converting her struggle into a powerful movement, a reminder that justice must be defended not just for an individual, but for the entire community. Here on Karma's Twists, we share the most impactful stories of karma and justice that the world needs to see. Don't miss a single moment of good triumphing over evil. Join our community and subscribe. Be part of the movement that believes justice always wins.